Hi, welcome to Arkintel. One nation went bankrupt. Now others are on the edge. Sri Lanka's default wasn't an isolated accident, it was a warning. The kind of warning that markets whisper about before panic takes hold. The same forces that broke Colombo are gathering elsewhere. Debts owed in dollars that keep getting more expensive. Reserves draining faster than they can be rebuilt. And global interest rates tightening like a vice. And here's the part that keeps investors awake at night. Once one country falls, the fear spreads faster than the facts. Bond yields rise overnight, currencies collapse in days, and entire governments are pushed to the brink in weeks. Sri Lanka was the beginning, but the real question now is chilling. Which nation becomes the next domino, and how many others will tumble after it? Sri Lanka is now the textbook example of a sovereign collapse. Its foreign debt ballooned to over $56 billion by 2020, but reserves were just a fraction of that. By early 2022, Colombo was sitting on barely $2 billion in usable reserves, while annual repayments were closer to $4 billion. The math simply didn't work. In April 2022, Sri Lanka defaulted for the first time in its history. What followed was a torturous restructuring. About $12.5 billion in international bonds were swapped into new state contingent instruments. Some linked repayments to economic growth, others to governance reforms. A world first. That gives Sri Lanka relief today, but with a catch. If the economy recovers faster than expected, repayments automatically increase. Creditors wanted upside protection and they got it. Meanwhile, the country's rating still sits in distressed territory, and the IMF demands strict fiscal discipline to prevent a relapse. Sri Lanka's story proves one thing. Once reserves run dry, default is not the end. It is the beginning of a long, grinding reset where every move is dictated by the creditors. The warning signs are always the same. Heavy debt in foreign currency, thin reserves, rising bond yields, and politics too fragile to deliver reforms. Right now, 5 names stand out. Pakistan. After years of IMF bailouts, Pakistan remains on the edge. Inflation that surged close to 30% in late 2023 has eased to around 5 to 6% in late 2025. But reserves are razor thin and the rupee fragile. Islamabad owes billions to foreign creditors and relies on rollovers from allies just to keep fuel and food imports flowing. One misstep and the system could snap. Argentina. The country is once again caught between austerity and survival. Even after sweeping reforms, inflation remains stubborn and investor confidence fragile. Roughly 60% of its debt is in foreign currency, leaving the country at the mercy of exchange rate swings. Political volatility keeps its bonds trading at distressed levels, and another misstep could trigger yet another default. Egypt. Cairo secured an $8 billion IMF program in 2024, but devaluations and surging interest rates have hammered the pound. On top of that, Red Sea disruptions have already wiped out about $7 billion in Suez Canal revenues, a devastating hit to one of Egypt's most critical lifelines. Without those inflows, Egypt's dollar shortage is acute. Ghana. Accra has already restructured its euro bonds with haircuts of around 37%, offering short-term relief. But revenues are weak, debt service remains heavy, and re-entry into markets is uncertain. Ghana shows how even after restructuring, countries are not safe, they are just less fragile. Kenya. Nairobi dodged default by paying off a $2 billion euro bond in mid-2024, but at a huge cost. Debt service is swallowing revenues and growth is slowing. For now, markets have calmed, but another external shock, higher global rates or a drought, could push Kenya back into the danger zone. And then there is Zambia, which defaulted back in 2020. Only by 2024 did it finally restructure $3 billion in bonds after more than 90% of creditors agreed. That 4-year limbo crushed its economy and left it as a cautionary tale of how slow creditor coordination can drag out a crisis. Debt crises don't explode overnight, they creep. First, investors demand higher yields and borrowing costs quietly spiral. Reserves get drained as governments defend currencies. Then come the shortages. Fuel, medicine, food imports cut back to preserve scarce dollars. People feel the crunch, unrest grows, politics turn unstable. Finally, the breaking point. Debt payments are missed. Rating agencies cut to default. Courts and creditors circle, and the IMF is forced in, not as a savior, but as a referee, imposing conditions that often trigger protests in the streets. The danger isn't one country falling, it's what happens next. Once a single domino drops, investors start scanning the horizon for the next weak link. That fear alone can become a self-fulfilling crisis. The IMF remains the core firefighter. Its emergency programs buy time, injecting dollars in exchange for strict reforms. But IMF money is never enough by itself. Creditors must also take losses. That's where restructuring comes in. Sri Lanka pioneered macro-linked and governance-linked bonds, tying payments to performance. Ghana forced bondholders into steep nominal cuts. Zambia relied on long-term extensions. Each is a piece of the puzzle, but none is painless. Debt for development swaps are also emerging, where creditors forgive part of the debt if countries commit to climate or social investments. These are small for now, but could grow. The real problem is coordination. Western lenders, Chinese banks, bondholders, and multilateral all sit at different tables. They rarely move at the same pace. Every month of delay deepens the recession and makes eventual recovery harder. This isn't just about emerging markets. Global debt, public and private combined, is now over 235% of world GDP. Public debt alone is projected to hit nearly 100% of GDP by 2030 if governments stay on their current path. That means the margin for error is shrinking everywhere. When one country defaults, others immediately pay higher borrowing costs. Investors no longer ask, "Will this country pay?" They ask, "Who else might not?" And in a world this indebted, the line between local crisis and global shock is thin. Debt is no longer just an economic story, it's geopolitical. Who pays, who forgives, and who controls the restructuring table are questions that will shape alliances, influence, and even global stability. Sri Lanka was the opening act. Pakistan, Argentina, Egypt, Ghana, and Kenya are all balancing on the same tightrope. Some may step back to safety with IMF support, others may fall. The dominoes haven't stopped, they are waiting, and the world's financial system, already drowning in debt, has less and less room to catch them. The next default won't just hit one country, it will test the entire global order. What begins as a financial crisis quickly mutates into a political one, and once that fuse is lit, no one can predict how far the fire will spread. If you found this video insightful, make sure to check out Is Africa the World's Next Superpower? In this video, we explore how Africa's young population, vast resources, and rapid technological growth could reshape global power if it can overcome challenges in infrastructure, governance, and development. Click the video to watch now.